Hello everybody, it's me, Henchoz, also known as White Zulu. I must explain from the start that the old apartheid flag, die Vierkleur, in my new background does not represent a political statement in any way whatsoever. My autobiography, White Zulu, is not a political commentary, nor does it include any particular references to apartheid and what it entailed. That flag is consigned to history now, and as I had no means of imposing a photograph on top of it, it remains on my wall. All that flag represents is a piece of history covering the first 44 years of my life. So please ignore it as exactly what it is. A meaningless piece of cloth now consigned to the history books. Thank you. Hello everybody, this is Fee, otherwise known as White Zulu, and here is a new piece from my autobiography of the same name. I have now left my beloved Henchoz family and I'm off to a real finishing school in Vevey, a very pretty town on the shores of Lake Geneva near Montreux. I meet the savages, their actual name, I haven't changed it, and find them very different from my previous warm, welcoming Swiss family. Many thanks to all of you who leave such complimentary comments under my videos, and I do hope you all enjoy this one. Hello everybody, it's Henchoz here, Viki, or the White Zulu, and I will apologize. I've got a bit of a sore throat. I've been sitting with people who've been vaxxed. I'm the only one in this building of a block of 25 flats who has not been jabbed. And they're now shedding on me. It's not very pleasant. I woke up this morning, as I have a couple of mornings now, with a severe headache and a very sore throat. But I've taken some throat lozenges, and I just hope my voice isn't too irritating. With that, I'm going to continue with my Swiss escapades, and this one is called Finishing School, Vevey, 1968. It was with a heavy heart that I said goodbye to the Henchoz. We walked down to the funiculaire station, Pierre carrying my now substantially heavier suitcase for me. I'd packed the 2 jerseys and ski pants just in case. This is probably the right moment to show you photographs of which I was able to get hold of and printed of myself skating on the tennis courts in my ski pants. And I'm going to hold it up, hopefully where you can see it, because I can't see it. I'll just peer around. And that's me at 18 on the skating rink, which is actually a pair of tennis courts, skating. I hope you can see it. I'll pull it back and then I'll push it forward a bit so that you can get the whole picture. That's just how I looked at 18. And I have another one because it was so difficult to describe the ski bobs that I took this photo of John T., my friend, the blonde one who was Louis Ami's girlfriend, the one I had such a crush on, 2 local boys at the top of La Braille. And now you can see what I mean about the ski bobs. They're like little tricycles with skis on them, and enormous fun if you were not able to see ski, since she'd broken her leg and I'd dislocated my knee earlier. So those are what ski bobs look like. And that's the background. I'm not sure you can see that either, but I'll just wave it around a bit, of the top of La Braille. Anyway, now you have an idea of what the ski bobs look like. And I'll continue. I packed the 2 jerseys and ski pants just in case, and now had my beautiful and as yet unworn silk dress too. I'd kept Mum's skis and other gear in the Henchoz loft with their ski things, because Pierre had told me that good skiers could ski on Les Diablerets all through the summer. Before I left, the Henchoz had written to my parents saying that they'd extended an open invitation to me to come up to them for weekends whenever I liked, depending on what the school had planned for weekends. If I was at a loose end, then I could take the funiculaire up to Chateau d'Ay, as they now looked upon me as part of their family. I was delighted at the invitation. The finishing school was an unknown quantity. I had no idea of what to expect there. But I did know that I loved Silette and Monsieur, and enjoyed having Pierre as a sort of tame boyfriend who'd look after me and take me out to dance or just hang out with his friends. We all embraced tearfully at the station, the little station. I'd already hugged and kissed old Therese on her hairy upper lip and slipped her a carton of Gauloise as a goodbye present back at the chalet. She'd been so good to me, cooking my favourite foods and fussing over me like a mother hen when I'd injured my knee that time. In a way, she reminded me of Evelina, with her short, plump, energetic body and her permanently cheerful personality. She was as illiterate as Evelina, my old Zulu nanny, was, with no English words at all. And, above all, I loved the way she'd taken me into her heart, showing no judgment or censure, just unconditional affection. When I waved goodbye to her as she stood on the step in her pinafore, waving a duster until I was out of sight, I'd thought of my beloved old nanny doing just the same as I'd driven off to Durban with Dad that day. Mr. Savage was waiting for me at the Vevey station. Vevey is a small and very pretty town still in the canton de Vaud, on the north shore of Lake Geneva, not far from Lausanne. It also happens to be the site of the world headquarters of the giant food giant Nestlé, founded there in 1867. Mr. Savage, that really was his name, I kid you not, was a short, slightly military-looking Englishman in his 50s, with white hair and a small white goatee beard. He was polite and courteous as he took my case and ushered me to a small car parked outside the station. I asked a few questions about the school, and he told me that the term hadn't already actually started yet. The other girls were still on holiday. I exclaimed at the beautiful view of the lake as the car climbed uphill, revealing Lake Geneva and the breathtakingly romantic Chateau de Chillon just off the shore. The first record of the castle is in 1005, and it sits perched on the rocky island like something out of a fairy tale. It had been made popular by Lord Byron, who wrote the poem The Prisoner of Chillon in 1816, about a monk who was imprisoned there. Byron had also carved his name on a pillar of the dungeon. The castle is also the setting in one of Henry James' novellas. Mr. Savage explained all this to me as he drove us up and into the gates of Fontanet, my new home for 6 months. He spoke good French, using all the correct grammar and vocabulary, but with such a strong English accent that it was clear he'd learnt the language at school in England. His rigid and slightly pompous manner, along with this ridiculously comical upper-class English intonation, gave off the impression that he was acting in a stage comedy, mocking the French. I wanted to giggle, as we'd done at some of the English tourists we'd come across in Chateau d'Ay, trying out their schoolboy French on the locals. But Mr. Savage didn't look the type to be trifled with. Madame Savage met me in the hallway and also spoke to me in French, explaining the rules. We girls were to speak French at all times, and if we were caught speaking English among ourselves, there would be severe consequences. I wasn't worried about that. My French was pretty much perfect by now, as after Jonty and Britta had left, I had spoken no English at all, and by hanging out with Pierre and his friends, I'd learnt all the slang as well as picking up a strong Vaudois accent. For example, instead of oui, we pronounced it we in a similar way to yes becoming year in the English language. Sorry, this fiddly thing. Get it right. Stuff it in. Madame's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up into her hairline as I replied to her questions in the slightly lazy colloquial manner of the village I'd just left, which must have come across as rather insolent, and I got the impression that my French wasn't quite what she'd expected from a privately educated South African girl. She looked me up and down. I was wearing genuinely faded denim jeans and a wonderfully spectacular long-sleeved cotton shirt I'd bought, made from the eye-watering bright red, white and blue American star-spangled flag. I wore white tackies without socks, and from her expression, I suddenly felt that I should rather have been in the dreary houndstooth-checked black and grey suit I'd worn all over those European cities with Dad, complete with stockings and sensible black court shoes. I also realised that it hadn't been the best idea to apply as much makeup as I always wore. If there was the remotest chance I might bump into Louis Ami or any ski instructors, which was all the time. Suddenly, I felt much as if I'd pitched up at my old boarding school, St. Anne's Diocesan College for Girls, in my casual and extremely common clothes. I'd chosen and bought my clothes for the first time in my life, as Mum had always insisted that I wear my older sisters' and my aunt's cast-offs Or, after I'd grown substantially taller than any of them, careful cotton shirtwaisters in discreet beiges or blue floral print, basically exactly what she wore herself. If Mum had seen me now, she'd have had an epileptic fit, and that was exactly why I dressed the way I did, to rebel against everything she'd instilled into me. Perhaps it hadn't been quite such a good idea to arrive on the doorstep of the savages' institution, dressed as I was, but I hadn't given it a thought, since Silette had given us all the freedom we needed to experiment with our own styles and had never commented. If she'd ever been astonished by our sometimes garish turnouts, she certainly kept it to herself. She'd also let us fool around with makeup, sangery, monkeying around, in her words, as she carefully hid her amusement at the way we looked as we left the chalet every day. Under Jonty's guidance, I'd adopted the most fashionable look for the late 60s in Carnaby Street, which was Mary Quant's panda eyes, that is, heavy coal eyeliner around the entire eye. We wore many thick layers of black mascara, bright glittery turquoise eyeshadow, and very pale pink, silvery glistening lipstick. I must have looked a sight, but we all wore the same heavy makeup, painstakingly applied every morning before we left to spend the day skiing, although mercifully mine was hidden behind my thick and heavy prescription glasses, as they were photoreactive and became sunglasses according to the brightness of the surrounding light. The other two wore darkened ski goggles. Our biggest problem was, whenever it snowed, we had to take off our glasses or goggles and wipe the blinding snowflakes off them to be able to see where we were skiing, and that exposed our mascara to wet flakes, leaving black smudged trails all down our cheeks. We were blissfully unaware of this problem until one or the other would notice and alert us to try and wipe the sticky black goo from our faces and around our eyes. The products had been developed and advertised as waterproof, but they were anything but. The only way we could scrub the black stuff from around our sensitive eye areas was with Pond's cold cream, and none of us thought to carry a little pot of it around with us. So, every lunchtime on a snowy day, we'd hurry to the ladies' room in the restaurant at the top of La Braille to inspect the damage and recoil in horror at the sight that met our eyes. Then we grabbed those cheap, minuscule and rock-hard slivers of soap available and stand over the wash basins, peering into the mirrors, scraping frantically at the damage. We'd come out again with our eyelashes still clogged together, our cheeks red and raw and chapped, only to have them exposed to the fierce and harsh conditions of skiing again. Occasionally I'd forget all about my eye makeup, only to get home that night and see my reflection in my bathroom mirror, recoiling at the sight. I looked more like Alice Cooper than Mary Quant. Perhaps that's why I hadn't been able to snag myself a boyfriend, although all the teenage girls had the same problem with bleary eye makeup as I did. Maybe nobody had noticed if I hadn't taken my glasses off that day. Perhaps, and most likely, the other girls had seen what I looked like but chosen not to tell me. I'll never know. After a thorough and silent inspection from head to foot by Madame, I was dismissed. Mrs. Savage was petite, carefully dressed and accessorized in what I later discovered was a Paris designer outfit. Her suspiciously immaculate butter-coloured hair was chic, bouffant, and looked as though she'd just stepped out of a classy hair salon. She was about 40, wore tiny, perfectly matched stiletto-heeled shoes, and her very visible makeup was carefully applied down to the tiniest detail. Her smile didn't reach her eyes when, on our meeting, she disdainfully extended her limp, manicured hand, complete with scarlet talons, for me to shake. She was a French Parisienne, not Swiss French, and made sure that everybody knew the difference. She, like many French people I got to know, despised the Swiss French as les paysans, peasants. It was odd. I'd come from a country rife with racism and xenophobia and found it so puzzling how everyone in Switzerland looked down on one another. The Swiss French considered themselves the elite and also called the Swiss Germans les paysans. The latter loathed the former, and everyone despised the Swiss Italians as beneath contempt. God helped anyone who innocently mistook one for the other. The whole subject was a minefield. Celeste was a prime example of Swiss snobbery, but in the nicest and most amusing way, as she even looked down on dear old Therese, who was a blood relation. I never found out exactly how they were related, as Celeste kept that one very close to her chest, as a paysan, but said it with a wink. Madame Savage had married Mr. Savage quite late in life, as far as I know, because they had no children of their own. It was left to speculation as to how or where they met, but she clearly held the whip handle of that marriage, as we were very soon to find out. The school had been built as a very large home for some wealthy individual who had sold it to another party, who had converted it into the school building it was today. It was square, painted off-white, and appeared to lack any characteristic depicting on what it actually was. It could have been an office block, a small rehabilitation clinic for substance abuse, or a loony bin. The grounds were small and equally non-committal, with neat oblong empty borders around the square lawn, and some kind of fruit trees planted regimentally all around the outer perimeters. One of the maids will show you to your dormitory, said Madame, and rang a little silver bell which stood on a bureau in the hall. Dormitory, I thought, my heart sinking. I hadn't taken to the Savages, as I felt no warmth coming of either of them. Oh no! Was this going to be a repeat of St. Anne's? It certainly didn't feel anything like the warm, friendly Henchoz home I'd left just a couple of hours ago. A rather nervous and very young Swiss girl in a maid's uniform took my case up to the second floor and showed me a room with 4 beds in it. Yours is over there, she pointed to the one against the wall, and furthest away from the glorious view of the lake and the castle. What's your name? I asked in a friendly manner, but she'd already gone, scuttling off downstairs. I could hear the bell tinkling again. I sat down on my narrow iron bed and sighed. I didn't have a good feeling about this place. It smacked horribly of an institution in which I'd only recently spent 6 wretched years. I had no idea what to do with myself. Nobody came up to tell me where to go, and I didn't feel courageous enough to go wandering about on my own. So I unpacked my case, hung up the few clothes I'd brought in what looked like a communal wardrobe, because there were already several dresses, suits and blouses hanging there, all considerably smarter than anything I owned, except for my long silk dress still with the label on. So I sat on my bed and read one of the Asterix and Obelix books I'd brought with me. They were in the original French they'd been written in, and Pierre had introduced me to the series. He'd lent me about 5 of his own copies, and I'd added another couple to my collection. They were the kind of books you could read over and over again, and the original versions had retained all the subtle French nuances, some of which became lost once they'd been translated into English. Reading them had also improved my French considerably. The humour and subtle nuances sent me into fits of laughter. That is all for the time being, and there's more to come next week. I would like to thank John Moslane for putting aside his Friday afternoons to help me produce these videos. Without him, I could not do this. I would also like to thank Sean van Vuren for his sterling work in uploading my videos to my YouTube channel, adding the photos, as well as managing my channel so professionally. If you would like to know more about my other works, I have written 5 books in all, and each one is autobiographical. Please visit my website at www.whitezulubook.com, where you will find a lot more information as well as plenty of photographs. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my life story, and there is plenty more to come. A thumbnail photo will be attached each week, and thank you so much for all your support and all the very kind remarks you make in complimenting me on my work. I really appreciate it. Goodbye.